Hello there, welcome back to some more talking into a webcam. That's not usual for me. It's the end of the year 2022 sort of review of the channel, where we go over all the games that we played this year, how I feel about all of them now that time has passed and I can actually think about it a bit more critically. Only 2 or 3 minutes per game, but considering that, that'll still be 51 minutes if I take 3 minutes per game, because we played 17 games today. So I might be talking for a while. Also going to be in one take, it's how I do everything. I don't edit around things I say unless I make some obvious mistake or have to leave. So that's what we're going to do. I want to start by saying thanks to everyone who subscribed this year. I'm making a note of it here because I don't think I did last year, and I'd like to come back next year and see how we did. So I think I'm up about 70 odd subscribers this year compared to last year, so that's really good considering I have 200 or so, 250 maybe, so having an extra 70 is a big percentage, so I'd really like to say thank you for that. And I won't bring that up anymore, so let's talk about the games we're playing. Let's start off with how we ended last year, started this one, which was Dragon Quest Heroes. At the end of last video we put Dragon Quest Heroes in because I'd just about finished it, but now I have finished it. I finished it in the 10th of Jan. So the 10th of January we finished the game. What do I think of it? It's a Dynasty Warriors style game and it had a lot going for it. I'm not the biggest Dragon Quest fan of all time. I'm much more into Final Fantasy than I am Dragon Quest. But the game, it captured my attention enough. I like the Warriors style games, so I enjoy them. I would say that the 100% requirement is one of those like silly things. All the Dragon Quests have this problem where the 100% requirement is like too much. You've got so many quests to do and all these different things that it's just not going to work, really, in general. And the game itself was good. Yeah, the music was good. Obviously, Dragon Quest is good. Music is very, very nice music. The characters are fun to play. Bosses were a bit spongy, I would say, so they had a few too many hit points. And you had, really, it's just a bit repetitive because you just have the one thing you do to them over and over and over again, and maybe there's like a stage mechanic or gimmick that you use, and it's not the most interesting in the world. But I would say it's probably worth playing. I will also probably play Dragon Quest Heroes 2 at some point. Maybe not this year, but the next one, I would imagine I will do that. But that's all I've really got to say on it. The game's good. Trying 100% it wouldn't have been fun, so I'm glad I didn't try and do it. Although that's hard for my brain to process because I like completing things, quote unquote, completing them. So that's difficult for me. Then going into the 11th of January, we went to Rustler. Rustler's a really fun kind of GTA sort of piss take. So it's a medieval GTA, essentially. I really enjoyed it. I don't play a lot of GTA style games. When I was younger, my parents wouldn't let me play them because they were quite violent and a lot of adult themes. And now that I'm an adult, I don't really have any interest in playing Grand Theft Auto or anything like that because it's a bit too serious for my liking. I know it's still wacky, but it's a bit too whatever, like they take themselves too seriously. I like Rustler because they didn't take themselves too seriously at all. It was very tongue-in-cheek, very childish but funny at the same time. And the gameplay was fine. Some of the missions annoyed me, like some of the mechanics of the way it works. But in general, it wasn't too long. Like, it was nice and short, which it was good. It didn't overstay its welcome. I imagine with the DLCs it may start to, but generally if I saw the DLCs didn't have like big positive reviews, I wouldn't play them, which is a conscious decision I made to save myself time, and also because if I enjoy the base game enough, I'll get the DLCs. And if people wanted me to play them, I would. But for now, it's not really that relevant for me. So I didn't feel the need to do that. Then, that lasted for 12 days until the 23rd of January. Then after that, I started Spyro, Enter the Dragonfly, that ended at the 1st of February. And Spyro the Dragonfly is not a very good game. And I don't like saying that because all games have merit somewhere in them. There's not objectively like a bad, like complete trash. Even the worst game you can think of probably had some element that was good, or at least you could see what they were trying to do, even if they didn't manage to do it. Spyro is one of those games to me where I could see what they were trying to do. It was hard to follow up Insomniac. Sorry, not Naughty Dogs. That's Crash Bandicoot. Insomniac's first 3 Spyro games that were really, really good on the PlayStation 1, and then they were moving to the next gen, and they wanted to try and recapture the magic. I think, to a certain extent, Enter the Dragonfly does feel like a Spyro game, but at the same time its controls are kind of loose compared to the relatively tight Spyro original trilogy. The music's not quite there, the gameplay's not quite there, the graphics aren't quite there. Everything's just a little bit off with Enter the Dragonfly. And unfortunately kind of spelt for a while the end of Spyro, because all the games afterwards were just progressively worse and worse and worse in different ways. And so it's like Crash Bandicoot in that sense, where only the first 3 people really like pretty much unequivocally, and then the other ones all have caveats like, oh, it's okay, but Crash 4 was okay, but the ball rolling was weird, or whatever. The Spyro is much the same. But again, it was mercifully short, so it was, you know, you can jump in, jump out, it was fairly quick, and I had enough fun with it. As for most things, my average is like an actual 5 out of 10. That's fine, I'd play a 5 out of 10. It's only when it's worse than that I kind of feel like I'm not sure that I'd want to play it again. Spyro's a game I think I'm happy to have finished 100% once and I probably wouldn't come back to. But there aren't many games that I would, so that's not really a knock on that. Then after that we moved on to the 2nd of February, where we started playing Secret of Mana, a game that I had seen a lot of people play, and in school a lot of my friends really liked it. It's like their favourite RPG of all time, but I'd never played it because I was more into like Mario and stuff and platformers on the SNES compared to RPGs. And it wasn't until the PlayStation 1 and I started playing Final Fantasy 7 that I liked RPGs, and then went backwards to play FF4, 5 and 6 and 1, 2 and 3. So I missed the RPG on the Super Nintendo, the SNES for us sort of era. And I'm glad I played it because Secret of Mana is actually really good. I enjoyed the storyline for what it is. It's not the most complicated thing, it's fine. The music's really good. The gameplay is strange, is how I would describe it, because it's more action RPG than it is JRPG. But the action element is kind of weird, because it felt, even the whole way through the game, I know how the combat works, but you never feel like you're fully in control of how the combat works. Like whether something will hit or miss felt a bit random at times, because it's not got the best user feedback. Although when you thwack a thing, it does feel satisfying to do that with like a critical hit. When you're missing, it doesn't feel very satisfying. Or if you're hitting something and it does 0, because you basically have to charge attack to do any damage. That's a little bit strange, without even getting into magic spam, which is essentially how you play the game. Once you know how to do it, why would you do anything else, sort of thing. Which is a shame. But I liked that, and I went back after playing Trials of Mana to Secret of Mana. And I can see why some people prefer Secret to Trials, although I haven't played Trials of Mana on the SNES, so I wouldn't know how that's different. I only played the remake. So yeah, but that game's really good as well. I think I would have enjoyed it when I was a kid, when I was playing other games at the time. I think I would have liked it because it was simple enough and not story heavy enough that I could probably have gotten into it, and my stupid mental autism brain would have been like, yeah, yes, grinding. I would have been able to be happy with the grind, because I like grinding in RPGs in general. So the grinding for spells and magic power, but I probably would have maxed out all the weapons and all that like an absolute freak. So that was fine. Small interjection here because I missed out Swine from the list. Between Secret Mana and Galaxy we played Swine HD, which was a RTS, which is a genre I really don't play a lot of. And it was an RTS from yesteryear, very old RTS. It shows its age to a certain extent, with its pathfinding and things like that. It was definitely of its time, and a lot of, like the old Command and Conquer games had that same sort of problem where the AI pathfinding is not very good. You get stuck on your own units all the time and the AI doesn't know how to get itself out of the situation it's created. Whereas games like StarCraft 2 and future games in the RTS genre sort of fix those problems for the most part. So that's interesting. It's one of those things. The music was kind of there, the strategy was fine, although artillery just let you cheese everything if you wanted to, which is what I ended up doing for most of the game. I don't regret playing it, but I think definitely just playing the Rabbit campaign and not going through the Pig campaign as well was for the best, because the same thing twice, I was already getting a little bit irked with some of the little things that were not so good about the game, and I'd seen what I needed to see from it to know that I liked it, but it wasn't really the best game I've played of the year. But I thought it was fine, and it was dead cheap too, so I couldn't really complain about the price. I think a modern take on it could be interesting, because I like games like Hogs of War and stuff. Animals that are given human personalities and then fight each other. I don't know why I find that interesting. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that. Anyway, back to Past Joey. That was fine. And that takes us into March. So already we're like 6 games deep, and we're only in March. So we're doing pretty good considering I needed 12 last year. Then we started doing Mario Galaxy, part of the 3D All-Stars collection, which I had done Mario 64 and Sunshine the year before, but then for lots of reasons didn't have a graphics, like a capture card and graphics card good enough to record it the way that I wanted to. So then in the 9th of March we finally managed to put that to bed and finished Galaxy. I've obviously played Galaxy before. Super Mario Galaxy is a very, very good game. It's not on the level of Mario 64 for me, but not many games are on the level of Mario 64 for me. And most of that's nostalgia, but also 64 is a game I could probably play 1,000 times, 100%, and be quite happy to do it. And Galaxy is a little bit slower paced. Some of the stars are a bit laborious to do, but the music's incredible. For the Wii, the graphics are really good. And the gameplay in general is pretty fun. I've only ever played Mario Galaxy 2 once, so if they release that on the Switch, that would be a completely different kettle of fish, because I never finished Galaxy 2, as in 100%. I beat the game, but I never finished it 100% because I didn't really enjoy it as much. I'd like to see, now that I'm a lot older, because it must have been 14 or 15 years since I've played it, that whether it would be the same, or whether I think I would like it better now. I don't know, but we'd see. But Galaxy 1, what is there to say? It's a really great game. It's worth playing, it's worth investing in. I don't even know if you can get the 3D All-Stars collection anymore, probably not. I don't know why Nintendo does these things, that's very stupid of them. But scarcity makes people buy things, so woo. But yeah. Then, after that, I played Pikmin 3, which I got back in the day for free as part of like a Wii U deal. I can't remember what it was, but you could get like a free Wii U game. And I picked Pikmin 3 because I had everything else they had on offer, like the Twilight Princess HD or Wind Waker HD or whatever they were offering. I already had them, so I played Pikmin 3. And I played about 2 or 3 levels and then stopped for whatever reason. And then came back when it came out on the Switch. With the Pikmin 3 Deluxe, I played that. Pikmin is a weird series to me, because to me it kind of peaked with Pikmin 1. Which is not to say that the other games are worse, because both 2 and 3 have far more about them than Pikmin 1 has. But Pikmin is kind of that weird series where I thought the purity, like the concept of Pikmin 1, just resonated with me a lot. I really liked Pikmin 1's simplicity, the fact that it knew what it wanted to be and it wasn't trying to be anything else. Pikmin 2 got a bit too crazy with the caves, I felt, and it was like annoying to replay them. You'd end up just restarting the level because you'd lose half your fight guys to one bomb or something, and then you'd have to restart the mission. Luckily it wasn't hard to do that. Pikmin 3 was easier than 1 or 2, in my opinion. It was much harder to lose your entire army. Not impossible, but then you could restart the day as well, so that was good. And Pikmin 3 had a lot of quality of life features that the first 2 didn't have, which was quite nice. And the flying Pikmin I liked. I'm still missing my white and purple Pikmin. Please bring them back for Pikmin 4. Just let me use all the Pikmin, okay? But yeah, it's a good music again. I like the story, it's simple enough. I enjoy the throwbacks to Olimar and Louie. I like those sections playing with them. I like the depth of content. There's so much to do in the game. It took me like a month and a half to beat the game. I started in the 25th of March and ended on the 13th of May. So there's a lot of game there. If you want to do everything in the game, there's a lot of game, which is good. And I like the fact that a lot of it's optional. You don't have to do it. The main game you could probably do in like a week, like 7-8 hours if you really tried. But then everything else was just a cherry on the cake. So the year so far, it's been me putting to bed a lot of old games that I had started but not finished. And so that's why, for example, if you go back and look at the videos, some of the backgrounds and the way that I made the thumbnails is different. It reflects the way that I did it back when I made the series, and it's one of those weird, again, brain things that I wanted to keep it. I could have changed it to be more modern to match how I do things now, but I wanted to match it how I did in the past because that made more sense to me. Yeah, so afterwards, so we've done the 13th of May, now we start Triangle Strategy. Now this game is really good. Triangle Strategy is a strategy game in the vein of Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre, the one on the PSP/PS1, because Ogre Battle is a bit weird. Tactics Ogre's a bit weird because they're kind of two series that are the same thing but have different play styles. But I'm talking about the one that's like Final Fantasy Tactics. Triangle Strategy, I would say, is probably my favourite strategy game since Tactics. So since Final Fantasy Tactics. It doesn't beat Final Fantasy Tactics to me, but it's up there in terms of quality. I really like the gameplay style, I like the fighting, I like the story. It's complex enough without being too complex. It didn't go down the route of Tactics where it's like, oh, actually it's demons now. This political intrigue is all gone, it's demons. And it stayed as political intrigue the entire time. There's some supernatural stuff going on, but it's not just gods and, you know, you've got all the Savi and all that, and it turns into some crazy shit. It was quite grounded, I felt. Obviously it has magic in it, so how grounded could it be? But it was grounded enough for me that I didn't get lost in the plot. It was quite easy to follow. And obviously I did the golden route, which is the true ending, quote unquote, or the best ending. And I really enjoyed it. I would probably play it again in a year or two on like hardest difficulty, and probably wish I hadn't done that. But that's my penchant for causing misery to myself. But yeah, the game's really good. That takes us through to June, so we're nearly halfway through the year already. And then I played Rogue Legacy 2. Rogue Legacy 2 was in early access for like 19 years or something. I don't know how long it was. But I played Rogue Legacy 1 and really, really enjoyed it, and thought that the sequel would be better. Saw some people play the early access of it, and I wasn't that impressed by it, all in honesty. And so I left it on the back burner for a long time. Then it came out in 1.0, and probably for another 6 months again I left it, and then I started to play it, and I really enjoyed it. Rogue Legacy 2, for those who don't know, is a roguelite, so it's kind of the game Rogue, for example. When you died, you lose everything, you start again. A roguelite is like that, you start again, except there's some level of permanence, so you gain a little bit of advantage every time. The game, in theory, gets easier and easier and easier to the point where you can beat it, and if you're extremely skilled, you could beat it from base level, but most people can't. So Rogue Legacy 2 just improved on 1 in every way, basically. Why would you play 1 when 2 exists, is how I felt about it. 2 has better movement, it has more options, it has the same sort of castle system, so if you like that, you'll like it in the second one. More classes, more interesting interactions, like items, relics, all these different things. Make the game much more interesting than Rogue Legacy 1, and I already liked Rogue Legacy 1 a lot. And 2 is just better in essentially every metric you can think of. Some downsides, I guess. In the same way as Legacy 1, sometimes the difficulty feels a little bit unfair. Like sometimes, how are you supposed to dodge this attack? How are you supposed to avoid that? Blah, blah, blah. Mostly it's user skill. It sounds like a skill issue to me. It probably is. But yeah, sometimes it feels unfair. So that's how I would say about Rogue Legacy 1 and 2. Sometimes the fights feel unfair, but you can always overcome them. And that's the part that I like. My grinding brain again is like, if you just do enough runs, eventually you will win, because you'll get enough money to upgrade your castle and get your better stats, and then you can pick the class you like and lock in the class you like, which I never did, but you could, and then just pick the class you want to play over and over and over again until you win. It's good. I like that. I also liked the both like and dislike. I like the challenge system, where there's a bunch of mini games you can do, and they give you souls for unlocking them, and they're to do with different classes and different scenarios, and sometimes it's fighting 2 of the same boss, or sometimes it's fighting a boss and not getting hit or whatever. And I like that a lot. What I don't like is them locking half of it behind New Game Plus and Plus 2 and Plus 3 and Plus 4. I know why they did it, but it still bothers me to a massive degree that they did it. I'd rather be able to beat the whole thing as 100% completion in a New Game 0 file. And probably to fix that, what you would do, and what I would recommend someone do, is download a file that has all of the shit unlocked to begin with, and then start from nothing as if you've never played it. I'm sure there's a way to like essentially hack the game so that you have all the things unlocked, but you have a default castle. That would be quite cool. I think that would be fun, because then you can experience the entire package in one go, which is probably better, in my opinion. And that takes us to the 5th of July, so that was about a month through Rogue Legacy 2. Then we go on to Metroid Prime 2, another game that I'd only ever beaten one time, I played the shit out of Metroid Prime 1, and I really, really enjoyed Prime 1. I finished it 2 or 3 or 4 times. And the only part of Prime 1 I don't like is the same part of Prime 2 that I don't like. The part of Prime... Well, let's talk about the good first. Let's try and be positive. Prime 2, I remembered not liking it anywhere near as much as 1. But playing it again now as an adult, I actually think it's fine. Like, it's probably just as good as 1. Maybe the level design is a little bit less memorable, I guess, as Prime 1. And the fact you don't fight Ridley, for example, is a negative. Because that's like nostalgia, you enjoy that. But Prime 2 was fine. I quite enjoyed it, actually. I liked the story, I liked the lore, I liked getting into the world and how messed up it was because of all the parasites and demons and darkness and whatever going on, all the ink. I enjoyed that a lot. But yeah, the bit I don't like is the bit at the end, like the key hunt. Lots of GameCube games had this thing. Wind Waker had it, Prime 1 and Prime 2 have it, I think Prime 3 also might have it, I can't remember. Where, you get to basically the end of the game. In Wind Waker it's about halfway, but you get to basically the end of the game in Prime 1 and 2, and then they're like, oh yeah, shit, we haven't actually got that much content in playtime. What can we do? Oh, I know. We'll make the player go around the whole world looking for random shit in the world. So in Prime 1 it was all the hieroglyphs or whatever to get the to open up the final dungeon, and in Prime 2 it's all of the caches, the ink caches in the Dark World to get to the final level again. It didn't need to be there. It just wastes time. You spend hours and hours looking for these things, and yes, you can technically find upgrades, and it gives you an excuse to go around the world and look for missile tanks and E-tanks and all that to upgrade your stuff, but I would have done that anyway. I didn't need the push to find the random bullshit to get it, and it's the part of Prime 2 I don't like. And I don't remember the older ones like Super Metroid or Metroid Fusion doing it, although they probably did and I just don't remember. But yeah, it really stands out to me in Prime 1 and Prime 2 is a thing I don't like very much. But the games as a game are fine. I know Metroid Prime 3 turned a lot of people off because of the motion controls, but I was playing with a keyboard and mouse configuration that someone had modded in, and I thought it was really fun to play those games like an FPS, which was different. It was certainly a different way and much more intuitive than with a GameCube controller. I've always thought that console FPSs are a bit weird because you have 2 sticks to do the things with, but you want to use a keyboard and mouse because you've got the analog input, like the actual proper analog input. And so yeah, I was just with the mouse. I mean, like the tracking, you can move very, very slightly, and you know exactly where you're going, and it's responsive. So that was really cool to play with the keyboard and mouse. That's enough about that. So that brings us to the 27th of July, where we play Ballistic NG. For those who don't know, that's a game in the vein of Wipeout. So specifically, the futuristic racing genre kind of had a fissure. As soon as it was incepted into the world, they had like a massive crack in a fissure. And Nintendo went for the F-Zero style of racing, where you don't have items, and it's fast as hell all the time. But you can boost and you can make yourself faster and you can kill each other. But the way you kill each other is by smacking into each other rather than shooting things. And PlayStation, and to a lesser extent Nintendo, but mostly PlayStation, went to Wipeout. And Wipeout was, you're pretty fast, not as fast as F-Zero, but you're pretty fast, and you have items that do things. So you can boost with items, you can attack with missiles and machine guns and kill each other that way. And F-Zero was the more technical game, like the courses were harder, you could instantly die by falling off. And things like that. And Wipeout was the more arcadey, they're both arcadey as hell, but Wipeout was the more arcadey but player versus player focused game. And so Ballistic is like a modern take on an old Wipeout, because even Wipeout changed over the years. So by the time we get to the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, the way it drove was completely different to the way it drove on the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. So Ballistic is like the old Wipeout games. They're all PlayStation 1 Wipeout games, for good and bad. The good part, it feels exactly like an old Wipeout game. The bad part, it feels exactly like an old Wipeout game. So let me explain what I actually mean. Graphically, sound-wise, gameplay-wise, perfect. Exactly feel like an old Wipeout. They are exactly what you'd want a game that's trying to be old Wipeout to be like. Course design feels like old Wipeout. Car physics feel like old Wipeout. Difficulty feels like old Wipeout. So everything that you want is good. The downside of it feeling like old Wipeout is all the negatives that come with that are still there. So, and the big one, and I've mentioned it, because I write sometimes, very occasionally, if I really feel passionate about something, I write like a Steam review for the game. I recommend Ballistic NG in my Steam review, but with the caveat that you don't try and do everything like I did. The downside of it is that the Platinum rank makes no sense whatsoever, in my opinion. The difficulty curve is up and down like a fucking yo-yo. It doesn't make any sense. And the reason why that's a bother to me is because the game specifically says that they put Platinum to be the highest difficulty and it stays at the level the whole time, and it's just not true. Sometimes you can do a Platinum medal on your first try without even trying, and sometimes, like I have proven, it takes you like 2 or 3 hours to do a single time trial to get the 1,000th of a second that you were missing. And that means that the difficulty is not balanced to be on a level. And it comes to a head with the final like 2 or 3 cups, where every single race is a nightmarish trial of patience and wanting to throw the game in a bin. Because suddenly you go from, you can make a few mistakes and the AI will go past you but you can get by them again, to if you make any mistake for any reason you will lose. Which is how it ends up being in the later levels. Especially the drag levels, if you hit a wall, you are going from first to last and you're done. And Wipeout didn't really have that problem. It has that problem to a certain extent, but Ballistic NG really makes that problem apparent. And it's annoying. It just killed my interest to play the game, but I was already so deep into the game that I had to finish it. So I would recommend that the game is really enjoyable if you just try and get gold medals and just try and win. Don't worry about trying to get platinums unless you want to show off your edict, which I don't really care about doing, but I thought it was going to be fair because it was on the same difficulty, and to me it wasn't fair. They could have fixed it by the time this video comes out. I doubt that they did though. That brings us into August. Now we're on to Wasteland 3. Wasteland 3 is another game that continuing with the theme, that I finished halfway, or like played halfway of the game and then stopped for whatever reason, and then came back later and did it again. So I started that on the 9th of August, it lasted till the 8th of September, so about a month again. Wasteland 3 is a good game that's not as good as Wasteland 2. So what Wasteland is, for those of you who don't know, is sort of like old Fallout. So Fallout, before Bethesda'd it, was a classic RPG where you had text-based interface and you could talk to different NPCs, and the combat was turn-based and you had a movement allowance and you could shoot and your ammo was taken care of and all that. And it was third person, so it was like, well, even not even third person, it was top-down sort of isometric sort of style. And Wasteland, made by the same lead guy, Brian Fargo, is based on those kinds of games. In fact, I think Wasteland 1 came before Fallout originally. I can't remember. They were roughly around the same time, but I think Wasteland 1 was the first one, and then Fallout 1 and 2 were made after, and then Wasteland 2 and 3 were made way after, like, you know, New Vegas, Fallout 3, that kind of thing. So Wasteland 3, to my mind, isn't as good as Wasteland 2, but they're both fine. Wasteland 3 is mechanically essentially the same as Wasteland 2, except slightly more gamey and slightly less Fallout. So what I mean is they simplified some of the systems in Wasteland 3. Wasteland 2, you had checks you had to pass, like your kiss ass or your smart ass, and if you had enough stat you could do a certain outcome. But they also had hidden ones, so you could type into the console and you'd get different outcomes. The most popular one being in the Veil Nomad camp, you could end up with both people allying rather than one winning over the other by using secret commands in the console and typing keywords and things. In Wasteland 3 that's gone. There's no console command to begin with, so you lose a little bit of that sort of old school RPG vibe, but the shooting and stuff is still the same. They made stats and things but they don't really use them as well as in Wasteland 2, in my opinion. So all of it, it's just like Wasteland 3 is like Wasteland 2, but a little bit worse in basically every way. Except the music's really good, the graphics are better, obviously, because they used a newer version of Unity, I believe. And the story's worse, and the characters aren't as interesting. And the overall story, like in general, the beats of the story aren't as interesting to me than the Kochai's AI. But the game's fine. The biggest problem it has is the developers, really. There are a lot of bugs in the game that have been in the game for months and months and months and months and months and months and have never been fixed. They may have been addressed at some point. I couldn't find information on the internet to corroborate that, but they may have been addressed. But, for example, going into a fight, a random encounter, and getting soft-locked because the game thinks you're not in a fight or thinks you are in a fight even though you've killed everything, happened multiple times while I was playing the game. And this soft-locks your game. You have to reload the game from an earlier checkpoint and lose progress by doing that. And that's not the only thing. There are various little bugs that are annoying, animation bugs and things, which on their own are not a big problem and I don't really care. But all added together sort of feels like it's not polished. And Wasteland 2 was also like that, and then they released a director's cut which was better, like a year after or something, maybe 18 months. And it was much better. So hopefully if they released a Wasteland 3 director's cut that fixed all of these bugs and made the game more feature complete in terms of like more content, that'd be good. It's another one where the DLCs for the game are, as far as people are concerned, make the game worse, which is never what you want. It's just like boss rush mode and like slightly more story but not really interesting. And that's a problem. So overall, I think I enjoyed the game. I like playing it. I know it's a lot of negativity, but the game is good. I enjoyed it a lot, but I definitely enjoyed Wasteland 2 more than Wasteland 3. And In Exile, I feel like they went the wrong direction with Wasteland 3, and they could turn it around for 4, or make a director's cut that fixes 3, and that would be pretty cool. So that leads us to September. Then we start playing Mario & Luigi Dream Team Bros. Dream Team minus the Bros for everyone in America. I don't know what it was called in Japan. Probably not that. So Mario & Luigi is another game that I got... I think I actually got quite far. I got to just before the altar bed in Mario & Luigi originally, and then played it again because I stopped halfway through. This was on my 3DS that is long since this could be in the loft, it could be in the shed, I don't know where it's gone, but I haven't got it anymore, basically. So Mario & Luigi, I emulated it. First time I've ever tried to emulate a 3DS game. Emulated pretty fine. Sometimes there's a few bits of lag, but overall it was pretty good. And the game holds up fine. I liked it. I think Mario & Luigi is one of those weird genres, like weird series of games, where Superstar Saga was like completely innovative compared to anything I'd ever seen, and then Partners in Time just wasn't very good. And then Bowser's Inside Story was the best game I'd ever played on the DS at the time. And then Dream Team Bros is kind of somewhere in the middle between those. The game's fine. It's not particularly difficult, except sometimes. And the ways that it is difficult is not difficult in the ways that I like. For example, sometimes to avoid damage, you have to first get hit. In my opinion. Maybe if you're like a Twitch reflex genius, you could figure out what they're doing. But for a lot of the enemies, I'd have to get hit first, or a couple times, to figure out what they're actually doing, and then I could dodge them. So then I was like, oh, I understand what they're doing now. Now how I've got the tell, right? Just sight reading it, I found really hard to do. And it's probably just a me problem, but it felt like it weren't the most obvious things of all time. Some enemies dead obvious, but a lot of enemies not so obvious. But yeah, the story's nothing to write home about. It has a lot of the problems that recent Nintendo games seemed to have, where they tutorialize you for loads of shit you don't need to be tutorialized for. And obviously the games are for children mostly, so I get why they're tutorialized, but it's quite annoying when you're 6 hours in and they say, here's how you spin. Like, just let me try it. Let me play with the game and see how it's doing, rather than tutorializing me on every single skill that I've got. and that's just a bit frustrating. But the game's good. It's long enough. It's plenty long. Sometimes it's a bit too long. It's got the same problem as Metroid in that fact. You have to go back to every world twice to do different things, like to collect the alphabet and then go to different parts of the world to do different unlocks. It seemed a bit strange. I would have preferred just to have the zones be bigger, but you only ever go to them once, if that makes sense. But yeah, the game's good, story's good, music again, incredible, really good. Particularly like a lot of the dreamy versions of the battle theme was like my favourite song. It's probably what's playing right now. I'm talking in silence, so I can't hear it, but that's probably what I'm put on it. And I really enjoyed that song. It's really good. And the game had a lot of content, a lot of extra stuff you could do. The puzzles and the different mini games, and I enjoy them. As a completionist, it's something different to do compared to just fighting and grinding. So that was fun, and that brings us into October now. So we're into the 19th of October now. Then we play Oddworld on the 20th of October, which is this. Well, I played Abe's Exodus to be exact, which is the sequel to Abe's Odyssey. Oddworld is a series that is criminally underrated, in my opinion, but is also overrated by its own developers, if that makes any sense. And I'll explain what I mean in a minute. But that's only really happened in recent times. Oddworld Abe's Exodus was essentially, think about Majora's Mask, and Nintendo was like, oh shit, what are we going to do? We have 6 months or 12 months to make a game. Let's just do Zelda Ocarina of Time again, but different. Abe's Exodus is that for Abe's Odyssey. Abe's Odyssey came out, and it sold okay, but not really as much as they wanted to. And so Lorne Lanning, the person in charge of Oddworld's inhabitants, wanted to make a different game as part of like a quintology of 5 different games that form one story. But for whatever reason, they couldn't do it the way he wanted. So they made Exodus, which was just Odyssey, but more things. So more levels, more people to save, more whatever. And Exodus was, again, just Odyssey, but better in every way. In the same way that, although personally, I like Ocarina of Time more, Majora's Mask is just Ocarina of Time, but more things. So more different power-ups, more skills, more, and a lot of people prefer Majora's Mask to Ocarina of Time because it was so different. Completely not by the numbers in any way. And Oddworld Abe's Exodus was kind of like that too. You were still saving people, but the way you were doing it was different. You had angry and sad and blind Madokans, and you had the fart power. You could possess a fart and blow it up. You could still take care of Sligs, but now you could control Scrabs, and you could control Paramites, and you could control Gluckons, and all these things that you couldn't do in Abe's Odyssey. That's just better in every way. And the music was incredible and really good. Probably put on some of the Slig music because it's really industrial. It's strange, the music. It's not like songs. It's kind of like an atmosphere. Everything about Oddworld Abe's Exodus is kind of like an atmosphere. Similar to Odyssey in that way. But as a series, and I think I edited it out in the actual playthrough just by happenstance, but the series is kind of dead now. Like, what they did is they remade Odyssey, and they called it New and Tasty because that's a thing that happens in the game. The Madokan meat, the Madokan pops, lollipop sticks made out of flesh humanoid people, was called New and Tasty in the game. So they remade the game and called it New and Tasty. But the remake was just the original game, but worse. And graphically it was much better, but in every other way it was worse. The game, it's an antiquated system, but the original game had a grid, and so you'd press the stick once and you'd very rigidly move from one place to the next place to the next place. And it was rigid. It did not feel like a good flow, but it made the puzzles and the way that you traverse the world very methodical, very understandable. You knew when you made a mistake, it was because you held the button for too long, or you jumped at the wrong time, or whatever. Everything felt was completely in your control, and it was very structured and it was enjoyable. In both Odyssey and Exodus, when I replayed Exodus, I felt that feeling again, like, oh yeah, I am in control of Abe. I know what I'm doing. I am this character. All the things that go wrong are because I did something wrong. That feels good. Because I understand it. They remade Odyssey and made it new and tasty, and I tried to replay it again recently on my own time and just couldn't do it. The controls, although modernised and technically better, feel way worse for this game. You feel less in control. It's less rigid, which is bad for this game. Although they introduced quick saving, which is good, and it was one of the best parts of Exodus compared to Odyssey, was the ability to save and load checkpoints really quick. The game is buggy. It's not particularly fun. I'm kind of going off on a rant here, but it won't be long. The game essentially is just worse in every way. And so I haven't brought myself to play Soulstorm, which is essentially the remake of Exodus. Although it's basically not Exodus at all. It's the same, it's after Odyssey, so the same as Exodus, but in every other way it's essentially completely different. You've still got the Soulstorm brewery, you've still got the general, like, making the drinks out of their bones and all that. But the beats of how you get through the game are completely different in Soulstorm. And as far as I know from what people have written online, they also think that Abe's Exodus, the original game, is better than the remake again. So, to my mind, it's that the people developing the games either don't know what they're doing, which is not very nice, I don't think that's true, or, more likely, Lorne Lanning and the management have got a different idea for what they want Oddworld to be than what I want Oddworld to be, which is just the old games with new graphics. It's one of those games like FF7, I guess, for a lot of people, where I just want a remake to be the exact same game but with new graphics. Like, modern graphics, 3D models, nice voice acting, nice visuals, but the same gameplay and the same story beats and the same everything. And then I would be happy. So I'm kind of scared to play. I will probably play it at some point, but I'm kind of scared to play Soulstorm because I know that it's not Exodus, and I really like Exodus, which is where I was going with this. Oddworld Exodus is really good. Abe's Exodus is incredible. I really enjoy it. It's Odyssey but better, and I really liked Abe's Odyssey. In fact, I have it on my PS5. I play it still now because it's short. You can beat it in like 3 hours. Abe's Odyssey. If you're good, you can beat it in like half an hour. If you're willing to glitch through some walls. So, yeah, that takes us to November. Then we have Sands of Destruction, which is an odd game. Again, a game that I played about halfway through, and in fact, it turned out I played much more than halfway through. I got almost to the end and didn't know, and then stopped and then played again. Sands of Destruction is like a very bog standard JRPG that actually had an anime made out of it apparently, and I didn't know. And that's all there is to say about it, really. There's nothing spectacularly innovative about Sands of Destruction. The combat system is interesting. You press buttons and you have little pips that go up every time you hit 10 people in a combo, or like 10 hits in a combo, or you get a critical hit once per combo, or whatever. But in terms of story or characters or visuals or music or whatever, there's nothing stand out about it whatsoever. But for some reason, I really enjoyed it. I don't know why. I'm kind of a sucker for JRPGs anyway, to be honest. But the game just has something about it that I quite enjoyed. It's a DS RPG with not spectacular visuals, a bit crushed to hell voice acting, and nothing about it that's majorly impressive, but just something about it I just enjoy. And I enjoyed playing it through again, and although I probably wouldn't play through it again now that I know what the game has to offer, I still think it's worth your time. It's enjoyable enough. I wonder how like a mage build could work. Probably wouldn't work because your damage output with physical attacks is just so high that magic would never be able to compare. But I would be interested to see how it would work. But yeah, the game's really good. I enjoyed it. That takes us to the 22nd of November, and then I play Soldier of Fortune 2, another game that I finished like half of and then stopped and then I've come back to it. And it was my dad's favourite game of all time. I say it like he's passed away, he hasn't. But it was his favourite game of all time. He played a lot of multiplayer. He was actually really good at the multiplayer. Would often top the leaderboards and stuff back when it had a big custom game scene. And he was in his 40s at that point, so he was doing pretty good. And I think the game is fine. It's okay. It's a game of its time, which comes with a lot of problems. For example, you don't get a map. You don't get to see where you've got to go. The gunplay is all hit scan, which for those of you who don't know means you press a button and it calculates whether you would hit them, and then you hit them. There's no like projectiles. You don't have to actually aim a shot and it falls and it hits the guy. It's just, oh, I'm aiming you and I click the button. If my cursor is over you, I hit you. And that works with the enemies too. And what that means is, although it's easy for me because I can hit them as long as my master's over them, I kill them. that's good for me. If they're in a bush and I can't see them, but their AI can see me, they can shoot me through the bush and I can't do anything about it because I can't see them with my eyeballs. My puny human eyeballs can't see them, but their advanced AI can see me compared to my human brain, can just see me and shoot me from across the map. And I can't do anything about it because there's no projectile bullet drop. They don't have to calculate anything. They don't have to take time thinking about how they're going to hit me. They just shoot and I take damage. So that's bad in that way. The game is not particularly long. It took me nearly a month to beat, but it's not particularly long. Mostly it took so long because I split up levels into missions. And sometimes there's 2 or 3 missions if it was very, very short, but sometimes it was just 1 mission a day. And we're also into the future now, because this is in like the 23rd of November and I'm recording this on the 20th of October. So after about Oddworld, which is I think starting today when I record this, I'm now in the future I'm in the past talking about the future for me, but it's the past for you and... Okay, so Sword of Fortune 2 is really good. I enjoyed it, but it's a game of its time, so it's not the most intuitive thing and it's not the most satisfying gunplay or anything, but as someone who doesn't play a lot of FPS, it's fine. Its difficulty is a bit weird. Even on the lowest difficulty, which is what I was playing on, I didn't have too much trouble, but there's still some things like that instantly kill you, grenades and fire and random death traps for no reason. And yeah, the hit scan is a big problem. But the game's fine. I enjoyed it. I can see why my dad liked it. And that takes me to the 17th of December, where we played the last proper series of the year, which is Theme Hospital. Theme Hospital is another game where I got about, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through and then stopped on the PlayStation 1, and it ran at like 10 FPS, and it was awful. But the game is really good, actually. I think it's one of those games, again, they were limited on budget, like in terms of size of the cartridge or the disc. I guess it would have been on like a floppy disk or something back then. It was like the late 90s. Or maybe on a CD. But I think they had to do quite a lot with quite a little. So I played on Core 6TH, which is a mod that makes it modernized. And I think the game, really content-wise, could have been done about 4 or 5 levels before it was done. And everything else is just padding, like it's slightly harder, you have to make more money, but you don't unlock any new rooms, you don't unlock any new illnesses or whatever that are major. And so there's a lot of... It's just a bit of a shame, really, that is the case. But I think the Core 6TH guys could make Theme Hospital an incredible game. It just needs about double the content of the content. So the campaign should be the same length, but there should be twice as much shit to do. Different illnesses, different cures, different research options, being able to make the machines stronger so they don't blow up in an earthquake and half your hospital die, and you lose 400 reputation in a single attack. Different hospital layouts, different kinds of staff maybe, I don't know. Maybe make not every single nurse white. It's just a weird, that's like the 90s, it's strange. But we have the technology, we could give different skin tones to the doctors and the nurses and the receptionists and the handymen. Let's just do that. Let's just make different sprites for them. It won't be too hard. And with the modding, it seemed fairly open that they could do a lot with it. So that seems fine to do that, to me. And then the illness is the most important part. The game's still funny, like I like having the bloaty head and then just pop your head and fill it back up full of air and that's fixing you. And that cure, oh thanks, I'll pay $1,000 for that. I enjoy that. I think the game holds up on a graphical level. I like the sprite work. Sometimes the things clip through walls, but I'm not sure if that's a Core 6 problem or a Theme Hospital problem, because I don't remember it happening in the original game. So it might be a Core 6 problem. But yeah, that's all there is to say. The music's banging, even though it's only like 4 songs on repeat. The songs are incredible, so you don't mind. And the gameplay is fine. It's slow paced, which is a management game, so that's what you expect. But like I said, I think the game could have been 3 or 4 levels shorter than it was, and that would have been fine. Then we get onto our 2 one-offs. Apart from Mario Kart Double Dash, which I didn't mention because I forgot about it, but in between Spyro and Legend of Mana, Secret of Mana, I played Double Dash for like 1 day and did the first cup. I will eventually do other cups as well. If I have a gap like that again where I'm missing a video recording and I need something desperately, I will do another Mario Kart Double Dash video. I played 2 one-offs, and the 2 one-offs are 20 minutes from 20 minutes from what? I always forget. till dawn. 20 minutes till dawn, and Disciples Liberation. I looked it up on Steam. I've just put 20 minutes in my notepad document that tells me when the dates were. So 20 minutes till dawn is a survival game in the style of Vampire Survivors, and there's like a million of them now, like this, like the hot genre of the day. And this is another one of those. I enjoy it. It's not a genre I'm very good at, or one I'm particularly interested in, but it's short, sweet gameplay, which a lot of people like these days. You can get in, get out, a run lasts 20 minutes at the best, and mostly lasts less than that because you'll die before then. It even has a mode that lasts 10 minutes because your attention span's so small you need it even faster than that. And so for people who like those little short bursts of gameplay, it's good. And I think it's simple enough that anyone can understand it. You just move and you shoot, and then you unlock upgrade and pick upgrade, and then shoot and move for some more, and then you either win or lose. That's great. I enjoy that a lot. It's kind of like a casualized game. It's like a slightly more complicated version of a mobile game. It's how I see those sorts of games. A mobile game would just be you move your touch screen with your finger and your character moves and you don't do anything else. Like it shoots on its own and then you just press button and then you shoot and then you press button. But this is slightly more complicated. You can actually free aim, you can move around, you can make synergies with different builds and get those sorts of things going. And in the video I won my run eventually because I had such an overpowered run that I couldn't possibly lose. And that's fun. That powerful feeling you get when you are just obliterating everything in front of you is power. It's good. I enjoy that. And then we played Disciples Liberation, which was it's a game that I'm currently playing on my own. It's like an RPG strategy game with overworld elements and stuff. From what I've played of it, which is about 10 hours, I enjoy it well enough. I'd say it's about 6, 7 out of 10. It's fine. It's okay. There's nothing amazing about it. It doesn't revolutionize the game. It's not blowing my mind or anything. But the game's fine. I enjoy it. The voice acting is there. It's there. It exists. The voice acting exists out of 10 is what I would say. But the story is nothing to write home about. It's okay. The gameplay's okay. It's a little bit simplistic. Sometimes enemies will kill you without being able to do anything about it. They won't kill your whole squad, but sometimes you'll lose a unit because 4 of their units went in a row and killed your guy. But that's positioning or putting yourself in a bad position or whatever. But the game has so many features to make the death of your character not matter that you just buy another one or replace them. And so you don't really feel like you don't feel, oh, this is bullshit. You kind of feel like, oh, well, that's annoying. I'll play the fight without this guy and then do it again. And if you do somehow manage to completely die, then it lets you retry, so you can just restart the whole fight with all of your guys back alive, or flee or whatever, or load a save, and that's not a problem then. And so I don't have a formal opinion about it because I haven't finished it yet, but in terms of how I feel right now, I think the game's fine. A little update on what's going to come next year. At some stage I need to play the pre-sequel, so Borderlands, the pre-sequel, because I'm going to keep doing that, although I'm not going to absolutely kill all the super bosses on my own. Fuck that. Once enough in Borderlands 2 is enough forever. I'm never doing it again. I'm going to probably play the DLC of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Torna, because I bought it ages ago and never played it. I'm still waiting for the Switch Pro. I'm holding out hope that one day it will come out and then I can play it on that at a frame rate that doesn't kill me slowly on the inside. And then besides that, it's just whatever I feel like at the time. The hardest part is finding things to play, or thinking of things that would be fun to play, because I'm like, is it going to be alright? Is it people are going to be interested? I don't know. But I'd like to play Final Fantasy 13-2 again at some point. I've never actually recorded it formally. I've recorded Final Fantasy 13 ages ago, and never actually played 13-2 on recording. I streamed it, and I played it on my own time, but I've never actually recorded it, so I'd like to do that. And there's a couple of other things. But all in all, it's just going to be as and when I think of something, I'm going to play it. So the floor is open, as always. If there's a game from the past or the present or the future that you think would be fun, or you think that I would enjoy, because ultimately the content that I like most enjoying or playing is stuff that I think you will enjoy, but also what I will actually like. Because I find it hard to fake enjoyment about something if I'm not enjoying it. I know a lot of the big YouTubers or whatever could play something that's completely dogshit, YouTube bait, and pretend like they're having a good time, and everyone like says, oh yeah, that's great, but I can't really do that. Not because I'm so better, I don't have to lie. No, I'm just incapable of doing it. I just I will let it get to me if I'm not having a good time. And there has been times throughout the year that you'll never know about where I've played a game for about 6 or 7 episodes and then scrapped them all because I realised I wasn't enjoying myself. And so that happens quite a lot. So if there's any games you think would be fun or enjoyable, Crash Bandicoot 4 is on the list, although I'm trying to see if they're going to release Crash Nitro Kart Refueled Thingy Bobby Walla on Steam, so that I can play that as part of the Crash chronology, that I've got all the other games there besides those. So if I could get those 2 done, that'd be cool, but I'm not doing Crash 4 without Crash Team Racing also being there. So that might have to be on the back burner for a while. But besides that, yeah. Once again, thanks so much for subscribing and watching and all that stuff. I really enjoy it. This is partly for you guys, but also partly for me to remind myself that actually I am doing quite a lot of stuff through the year. I know it's easy to think, oh well, it's not that difficult, you just turn up with talking to a microphone and play video games. How hard could it be? But it is a lot of commitment if you think about the amount of hours it's taken me, probably a few hundred hours over the course of all of these videos. So yeah, it is quite a large commitment, and I'm happy to do it. Another video year done where a video's come out every single day without fail, which is something that I try and do because it's been done before. For example, Vowcow is a YouTuber I've watched, or Let's Player to be specific, because he doesn't do other things on YouTube, that I've watched for many years, and he takes it a step above me. He does 2, sometimes 3 videos every single day without fail, and that's incredible. Like, I really appreciate that work ethic. It stands out to me as impressive. I'll put a link to his channel in the description because it is really cool. And his vibe is like a lot of non sequiturs, which is not really my style, but it works for him and I enjoy it when he does it. Of course, he gets paid to do it. Like, that's essentially his job. My job is to help adults learn maths. That's my job, and then the YouTube stuff is just a bit on the side. I've never really been paid for, apart from LTO Hector 78 has always helped me on Patreon ever since fucking 2010 or something, like long time ago. He supported me, so that's really cool, and I really appreciate that. He was like my first internet friend, if you want to call it that. And so yeah, so in terms of doing it for money, I've never really done it for the money because I don't get any. I don't get the money. Would I like to? Yeah, obviously. I'd be an idiot to say no, but not at the cost of faking enjoying myself if I'm not. So that's where I'm at with that. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for something completely different. Goodbye.